So we just finished watching Gotham.
Well, you did. It's been a while for me.
For anyone who's not aware, the concept of this show is exploring Gotham City before Bruce Wayne became Batman, mostly focusing on Jim Gordon, back when he was a police detective.
Which could have turned out to be pretty cool, I guess, if they did it right.
In theory, it could have, but I thought it was a dumb idea to begin with, because the appeal of Gotham City is that that's where Batman is based. I don't think anybody reads Batman comics for the side characters.
Speak for yourself. I'm a huge fan of Aunt Harriet. But they try and shove in all these Batman villain characters, even though Batman doesn't exist yet.
Well, they started doing that after a while. In the first season, they were trying to do either more obscure villains or make up some of their own villains or do the father of the Scarecrow or the father of Black Mask, which, of course, they're exactly the same as the regular villains.
It was kind of analogous to the early Batman comics, I guess, where he didn't fight supervillains, he just fought regular criminals and mobsters and stuff.
Yeah, which, again, that could have been good if they had characters that you cared about or, good writing.
I will say the show definitely felt more grounded in the first season.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I guess didn't work very well because then it just went nuts.
Yeah. There were some good characters early on, I would say. I liked Jada Pinkett's character.
You have to say her name. Fish. Her first name is Fish, not her last name. Her last name is Mooney.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of fits the kind of Dick Tracy kind of villains that they had back in the day. And I thought the guy that played the Penguin was really good early on, too.
Yeah.
Although he became, pretty much like every other character, kind of a stereotype as it went on, where they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, because you can't advance these characters too much, because you already know where they're going to end up, and there's only so much room to move.
He wanted to be called Penguin, but I don't remember. It was so long ago. Why did he want to be called that?
They were initially calling him Penguin as an insult because of his limp, because he waddled like a penguin. He wanted to own the name and kind of use it in a different way. Use it as a strength instead of a weakness, which, I mean, he's still a waddling weirdo, so I don't know.
Well, in that case, maybe I should do the same. My kids always call me Shithead.
I could see that being a Batman villain. One other thing that impressed me early on was the cinematography, which I thought was really good in some of the early episodes. And of course, as it went on, they started throwing a lot of CGI in there, and it wasn't so good as it went on. Although it was weird because there were still episodes where suddenly it would be really good again.
They also throw in Bullock, who was a Batman character.
Yeah, who's normally a corrupt cop, but in the show becomes one of the main hero-type characters, which I thought was weird.
He's played by Donal Logue, who is perpetually the same age in everything.
Yeah, that's true. And he pops up in a lot of comic book things, too. He was in Blade. He was in Ghost Rider. He was in some movie called Comic Book Villains. He was in American Splendor.
I think it's really funny that I found an interview, and the guy shoves his mic into his face so he can say his own name, because it's clear he doesn't know how to say his name.
Yeah, well, I wish more interviewers would do that.
And we get Dr. Leslie Tompkins, who in this show is played by
Morena Baccarin. I assume that's how you say her last name.
And they all work in the police station, which I think it's funny the whole show. They say GCPD from episode 1 to episode 200. They never say the police station or down at this station. They always say GCPD.
I think that's probably from copy and pasting in the script so much.
I mean, can you imagine? We got to get to NYPD. I was down at NYPD.
I think they really want you to remember that it's set in Gotham City.
Yeah. I kept forgetting. Thank God they showed that title text every time. Gordon is played by
Ben McKenzie, who's probably best known for The O.C., which, of course, I never watched, but
Liar.
I was aware of it.
Yeah,
I showed
right.
the commercials every 5 seconds back when it first aired. Back when I used to watch TV.
Wasn't there a Green Day song for the theme?
I don't know.
It was the Lonely Road song.
I don't like Green Day, so I don't know.
This discussion is over. He does a good job scowling a lot and kind of looking off to the side right before he says what he needs to say.
I feel like a lot of times when he's trying to sound serious, it almost makes me laugh. It almost feels like he's acting for his son or something like that. Where his son's like, "Hey, Dad, I want you to play Jim Gordon in my Batman play." And he's like, "All right, I'll do it, son." And then he just kind of says his lines, and it's like, "Was that good? I don't know, was that good?" And his son's like, "Yeah, that was awesome, Dad. Go shoot the bad guys."
I think of him finishing every line on a giant exhale. I'm going to try it right now. I have to inhale really big before I say it.
It's called acting.
Like, okay. We have to go stop Two-Face. See, that was pretty good. That sounded exactly
good, yeah.
like it. Yeah.
I think he was trying a little too hard to sound tough.
Or just like everything is such a burden.
Yeah, which I mean, granted, if all these things that happen in this show really happened to one person, I think they would go crazy and kill themselves and be like, I want out of this show.
We have to remember to order extra pepperoni this time.
There is some good acting in this show, but his acting feels more appropriate for the show.
Agreed.
When you have actual good actors saying the dumb lines that they have to say in this show, it feels out of place. It's kind of distracting.
There's also some terrible acting in this show.
Yeah. Do you have any specific culprits that you want to point out?
Yeah. The one dude that was not the Joker, but you thought it was going to be the Joker, one of those characters. Because that happened like 5 times.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Joker a little bit. One of the things they said they wanted to do early on was have a lot of background characters that you would think, oh, could that guy turn out to be the Joker? And they only ended up doing that like twice early on. There was a comedian, and then there was some other character. I can't even remember at this point.
There was like some dumb robber who put on a red hood, and as he robbed the bank, he stood up and was being very theatrical about everything, and then after they killed him, and another guy put on the red hood.
Then later you had Jerome Valeska, the weirdest name ever for a character, who basically becomes the Joker, but then they kill him off. And I remember that one episode where you had people in the town sort of reacting to him on TV or something, and they seemed to be turning into other Joker imitators, but that didn't go anywhere.
And I thought before he was killed, or not really killed, or whatever, this show was a giant Batman soap opera, his acting was really bad, and it seemed like they only cast him because he could do a weird, creepy smile. Because he would do it at least 30 times per episode.
And after they killed Jerome Valeska, of course, like you were saying, soap opera, they had his twin, Jeremiah Valeska, show up, who also turns into the Joker, but it's a different Joker, an even lamer Joker.
And it turns out Jerome isn't even dead, so at one point they're both walking around.
Wait, really? Okay. I forgot about that. Okay.
Because the Penguin... See, I feel dumb, like, explaining it like it makes sense. So the Penguin ends up in Arkham at one point, and he's talking to this person through like a grate in his wall, and it turns out to be Jerome, who wasn't really dead. And he's somehow taken over Arkham. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question here.
Okay.
Was there ever a point during this show where you felt like the writers knew where it was going? That's a genuine question.
No. Maybe closer to the beginning?
Yeah.
It seems like they had plots that they wanted to resolve or kind of expand upon, but then either they forgot about them, or they got different writers, or the people at the top decided they wanted the show to go in a different direction, and it just seemed like firing randomly.
Yeah, well, I know the original season, the first season, was originally going to be way shorter, and they kept expanding it as they were filming. Fox kept ordering more episodes, so they kind of had to fill in gaps all of a sudden, kind of pad things out, and I'm sure that threw things off a lot, but you would think by the later seasons they would have a better handle on things, and, I mean, those made less sense, if anything. It felt more like just random characters popping in and out whenever they felt like sticking them in there. Or whenever they said, oh crap, remember that character? We didn't resolve something about them, so let's just stick them in here. And there are a lot of plots and subplots that never get picked up again after they're introduced in the first place.
Yeah, and things that potentially are huge. Like the entirety of Arkham Asylum breaking out and just running all over the city. Like 2 episodes later, nobody's talking about it. Apparently it just never happened.
Yeah. They had kind of what they referred to as story arcs usually for half a season at a time, with names like Rise of the Villains and Wrath of the Villains and Mad City and whatever. But watching the show, it often felt like at the start of it, like they said, hey, here's where we're going to push things. And then it would either fizzle out or they would, again, just forget about it. And by the end of it, it didn't feel like a story arc. It just felt like a bunch of random stuff that happened, and then let's start the next random stuff. And that's pretty much how the entire show ended up going.
They also work with the Riddler at the station, but he's not the Riddler yet. He just speaks in a bunch of riddles all the time.
and has questionable motives. Yeah, they tried so hard to say, hey, these aren't the villains yet, but they will get there eventually, but they're basically the villains already. They might not have the name, they might not have the exact outfit or whatever, but it's still the same thing.
I'm pretty sure at one point there's a character who walks around calling him Riddle Man the whole time. Yeah, he was macking on that girl, but her boyfriend was the cop.
Oh, you gotta say her name, Kristen Kringle.
Yeah, he was macking on Kristen Kringle, and her boyfriend was a cop who kept calling him Riddle Man.
So why was her name Kristen Kringle? I was hoping she would come back as, like, a Christmas-themed villain or something. Elf girl, or...
Well, the actress came back as a completely different character.
Yeah, who was not related to the first character, correct?
Correct. And then at one point, she even dressed up as the other character and started playing her in real life.
That perfectly sums up how ridiculous this show is.
When he starts turning to crime, he teams up with the Penguin.
And they basically just keep doing random things over and over again.
Either together or trying to backstab each other while they're doing it, but then becoming friends again. It's all over the place.
And every time something happens, it's like you're supposed to feel that it's important, but it's probably something that has happened already involving these characters. You already know kind of that things that have happened already are going to happen again after that. You know they're going to fight again. You know they're going to team up again. You know they're not going to die because you know who they're supposed to be in the future. So there's a lot of drama that they try to build up that just it just feels like you're kind of waiting for the scene to be over.
And in the beginning, the main antagonists are really mobsters and organized crime.
Yeah, so at least they can do something with those characters since they're not quite the big villains that people are waiting for or whatever.
But then that all gets wiped away, and it becomes only the supervillains. One of the mobster guys is Penguin's henchman, but he's not his henchman by choice. Wasn't he brainwashed or something into only following his orders?
Something like that, yeah. Butch Gilzine.
Who then dies, but then is resurrected as Solomon Grundy for no reason. And he even calls himself Solomon Grundy for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, what a weird character to stick in a show like this. And to go so far off from the comic version. It was just weird all around.
It was excuses to try and get different villains to team up together.
Yeah, a lot of the time it felt like when villains showed up, it was just so they could say, hey, look, this villain is there. But without thinking things through or saying, how is this going to work?
That seems to sum up the entire show.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Freeze.
You mean Mr. Fries?
I was so irritated that they kept saying, they kept saying his full name every time they talked about him.
Yeah.
Victor Fries, Victor Fries, Victor Fries.
And other characters would even say Victor Freeze, and then they would correct them.
Right.
Because this isn't a comic book show. His name isn't actually Freeze.
And then when he got turned into Mr. Freeze, everyone just started calling him Victor Freeze or Mr. Freeze. They never called him Fries ever again. And his counterpart, Firefly, which I'm not even sure how she became Firefly in this show. I don't remember.
I don't either.
There was fire involved. Possibly a fly.
Let's talk about Bruce Wayne and Alfred.
Alfred was awesome.
Yes, he was one of the standout actors in the show.
And characters.
Yeah. I feel like Alfred is one of those characters where a lot of times people don't know what to do with him or how to give him a personality, but this show did a really good job with him.
I've never seen anybody dust off furniture like that.
We do see Bruce Wayne's parents murdered in the first episode, and early on, a big part of the running plot was trying to find out who killed his parents, but like everything else in the show, it ends up feeling like it doesn't matter.
Even after he finds out.
What did you think of the kid that played Bruce Wayne, David Mazouz?
He aged a lot over the series, and I thought in the early seasons when he was really like a kid, his acting was pretty good.
I agree.
And I thought as the series went on, his acting was still the same, but he had less storylines to work with. He was kind of just a victim of the writing of the show.
Yeah, there were times when you could tell they were kind of saying to the audience, hey, look, we're pushing him toward being Batman. But then they would back off on it because they would say, oh, crap, we have another season to go. Let's kind of pretend that didn't happen and then do that again later.
Yeah, like he discovered the Batcave with Alfred, but then they said, shit, it's only season 2. So then they said, the computer is going to need a lot of work down here. It's going to take at least 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, and then, I mean, in the later seasons, they don't even talk about it at all. And he even gets a costume at the end of season 3, maybe, and that never comes up again later either. And we do see him turn into Batman in the very last episode, which I was glad they didn't show him that much in that last episode. I mean, that's probably the best thing I could say about it.
He did have that romance thing with Selina,
who, of course, is the future Catwoman. I thought she was one of the worst actors on the show.
Well, she didn't have anything to do. She was seemingly with and against every character at the same time.
Yeah, even though she's very questionable in her motives and purposes, every character seems to just tolerate her being around, no matter what's going on, or even asking her for help for things. And she helps characters for no reason and just kind of goes along with everything. She's just kind of there.
She has no direction.
And even her romance that you talked about with Bruce Wayne felt like it didn't really make sense, because there would be times when it seemed like they were trying to push that, but then, like everything else in the show, they would back off from it, and then they'd go back to it later, and it didn't make any sense.
And she, of course, starts off in the show doing all these flips and, like, climbing up walls like a cat and whatever. And then later, how did she, like, what did she get? Did she get injected with something?
Oh, yeah. She gets shot and is going to be paralyzed.
Yes, and then they literally take the same scene from Batman Returns, where she falls out a window, lands on the ground in an alley, and a bunch of cats start, like, biting her and turn her into Catwoman.
That didn't happen? Did that happen?
Yes!
Are you sure?
Yes, Bruce's... Okay, soap opera time. Bruce's evil clone...
Oh, I forgot about him. Oh, man.
pushed her out of a window once she realized he wasn't the real Bruce Wayne.
Okay, I forgot all about that. Oh, man. Okay, because I was thinking of later when they go to Poison Ivy, which we'll get to her. Where Poison Ivy tells Bruce, who's looking for a way to save Selina, because she's going to kill herself if she stays paralyzed or whatever. She gives Bruce a plant that will somehow fix her back. And when Poison Ivy is talking about this, she describes what's happening inside the body in detail. And I wondered how the hell she knew how the plant worked like that when it's inside somebody's body. She's not a doctor. As we will talk about, she is a child that has been aged into an adult.
Twice.
Yeah. But somehow she knows how this plant works once it goes inside your body. And of course it works. But they say it brings out the evil side of a person or something like that.
I thought it was like your innermost whatever.
Something. So of course it's supposed to be turning Selina bad.
And into a cat, because we see her eyes do the cat thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But she ends up still just being the same character. It's like they forget about that in 2 episodes.
All the way through the end of the show, she's just the same. It was not really a perfect character transition.
And that was the final season, and I know the final season got cut in half while they were setting it up and everything, so they kind of had to change things in that season as well, and kind of cut out plot lines that they were planning on going into.
Yeah, when they cut that out, I said, wait, I thought she was becoming a cat, and now she's not. Meow, what are they going to do?
But the thing is, if I didn't tell you about these behind-the-scenes things going on with the show, you wouldn't think anything of it because it doesn't feel any different from the rest of the show. It still feels like a bunch of random things happening, with random characters showing up for no reason and doing random things. And one of the things that made me groan the most in the entire show was the scene with Selina in the last episode, which is set 10 years after the rest of the show, where she's going through the lasers to steal something, and she's doing all these ridiculous acrobatic things for no reason, and it just looks so dumb. It's clear that they wanted you to be impressed and think it was cool, but it doesn't make any sense, and it was just so stupid and over the top, and oh man, it was painful.
Yeah, and she works a lot with Barbara Keene in the show.
Who started out as Gordon's fiancée. I think it was in the first season when she was kidnapped by a serial killer and her mind was screwed up or whatever. And from there on, she's evil and becomes a crime lord in the city just because she's evil. Just by nature of being evil, she becomes a crime lord. I mean, she very much started out as just kind of the female love interest for the main character, kind of off on the side. That was just there for him to go home to, basically. And now she's a crime lord. And even more ridiculous than that was the stuff at the end of the show where, after trying to stop her all this time, she, for whatever reason, Gordon ends up sleeping with her. And over the course of literally a couple of episodes, she is pregnant to the point of, like, she's about to give birth. And Gordon is worried about what he's going to do for the kid and blah, blah, blah. But she's been a completely maniacal character who's murdering people and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, she's just a mother. And it's like she gets away with everything and everybody just kind of lets it go.
You forgot about the part in the middle where she was, like, possessed by Ra's al Ghul.
I did forget about that part. Oh, man.
So Ra's al Ghul wants Bruce Wayne to kill him because apparently only Bruce Wayne can kill him. So he goes through all this elaborate plot stuff. It turns out he's behind so much of everything. And Bruce wants to kill him because he's done all these bad things. But it seems like there would be a lot easier way to do that than to go through 2.5 seasons of all this weird plot stuff. Because initially, you don't realize that Ra's al Ghul is actually behind all the antics of, what was the mayor guy's name?
I don't remember.
The guy who got blown up with the bazooka.
Oh, Theo Gallivan.
Theo Gallivan.
I forgot about that.
Who, before he was blown up by a bazooka, after being resurrected by Hugo Strange in his weird underground lab after being dead a first time.
Yeah, didn't he have a relationship with his sister other than just being siblings?
Yes. And Barbara Keene was also in that triangle.
Yeah, which after a while it seemed like they just used it as an excuse to have them making out for literally 5 minutes per episode.
Agreed. So Theo Gallivan's plan is to take over the city because apparently Bruce Wayne's ancestors and his ancestors like clashed or something. And he figures the best way to fix the problem is to take over Wayne Enterprises, kill Bruce Wayne, and just be an evil dude. I think that sums it up, right?
So I was watching the show as it was airing for the first 4 seasons, so a lot of it I don't remember super clearly at this point, which is probably good for my sanity.
Yeah. Clayface shows up twice, but then never again.
Yeah, I know that was one character that they said they intended to use in season 5, but they had to cut him out.
What a shame. Because at one point, I remember he imitated Penguin's dad, who was played by Paul Reubens, which I thought was a very humorous touch and something that was actually kind of clever.
Yeah, by chance. Because they basically try to pull things from every Batman thing you could think of in this show to try to appeal to all the fans at the same time, which is a terrible idea.
And they didn't even do it well.
Yeah, which is also why you have the weird tonal shifts between it being serious sometimes and then wacky, and having the Tim Burton characters pop in every once in a while, where you have the reporters with weird hairstyles that don't make any sense and come out of nowhere.
And then you jump into the Joel Schumacher era, where you have the Riddler doing a Wheel of Death game on a stage in front of a bunch of people.
Did that happen?
Yes. You don't remember that?
No. I remember when he was in love with Lee Tompkins. What did she do? Didn't she take over the underworld at one point?
Yes, she took over the Narrows after she did something.
Yeah.
Because then she was in a romantic relationship with the Riddler, even though the Penguin wanted to be in a relationship with him.
He was in love with Tompkins. Didn't Tompkins end up with some mobster's son or something like that?
She ended up with...
For a while.
Yeah, she ended up with one of the mobster's sons who was infected with the Tetch virus, which the Mad Hatter's sister had, which just makes people crazy. So let's talk about him. So he wore, naturally, the comically large hat in almost every scene, including when he was in Arkham Asylum. He made one out of his shirt, and he spoke in rhymes some of the time, except when the writers forgot he was supposed to do that.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't try to do that with more characters, like the Riddler. I feel like they did for a little bit.
Well,
Maybe.
I noticed for the Riddler, they reused a lot of his riddles, so the writers must have not been very smart.
I mean, some of his riddles, I don't know if they wanted you to actually think he was smart, or if he was supposed to seem dumb and just think he's smart. Some of his riddles are riddles that I've just heard around. I mean, he couldn't even come up with his own.
And I thought it was funny, there was one point where he was holding Bullock hostage, and he told Fox he had to solve his riddles, and he gave him one, and Fox answered it, and he's like, no, that's not the answer. And he's like, yeah, it is the answer. There's multiple answers to your riddle. And he's like, but that's not the one I was thinking of, so you're wrong.
Yeah, they did the same thing with him and with the Penguin, where they kind of undercut the threat of the character a lot and made them seem like a joke. And I don't know if you were supposed to feel that way or not.
Well, especially in the end, in the last episode where the Penguin showed up and he was just fat for no reason at all, because the Penguin is supposed to be fat.
Yeah.
And he has a monocle, and he has the long cigarette thing.
Yeah, and their reaction to seeing Batman for the first time was really dumb.
So also infected by this Tetch virus is Michael Chiklis,
Who plays Nathaniel Barnes.
captain at the GCPD. I was going to say the police, but I can't say that. Who eventually becomes, the executioner?
Yeah.
Who basically just walks around killing people, and he's really strong because they're guilty. I think that's his whole character at that point. He just walks around screaming guilty and slashing people up.
Yeah. And then what happens to him? He probably dies or something?
I think he dies. They're in the police station. They're in the GCPD, and there's like a standoff between him and Gordon. I'm not sure. Oh, no. But then the lady from the Court of Owls, which is the super secret organization that actually runs Gotham City, he cuts her head off, right?
I don't remember.
But then what happens to him?
I was trying to remember what they did, but I can't remember.
Okay, let's talk about the Court of Owls. So there's this super secret organization that apparently the writers decided should exist at some point.
Well, that was from the comics.
Yes, but it wasn't part of the show up until they decided maybe we should try and stick it in somewhere.
Yeah, which fit with the comics, because it wasn't part of the comics until they decided to stick it in somewhere.
So I lied earlier. Theo Gallivan was actually working with them. Isn't that correct?
I don't remember.
Or maybe, okay, I don't know. But that was like the biggest threat, but then it just kind of went away.
Yeah, which, I mean, you could say that about pretty much every character in the show. They were the biggest threat, and then they just went away.
One of the biggest recurring threats was Hugo Strange, played by B.D. Wong, and I did like his performance. I thought he was really goofy.
Yeah. I don't know if we were supposed to think he was goofy, though.
But he was.
Yeah, and it worked. I liked his weird voice.
Yeah, his weird, like, George Takei type delivery.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure at one point he said, "Oh my."
He did, and I did think George Takei, yes.
So he's just experimenting on people. He's a reason why a bunch of the supervillains are supervillains.
Yeah, they kind of use that as just kind of a way to explain things away. And he ends up just kind of being there in the background for a lot of the time, even though he's, again, a big thret early on.
And they always let him get away because...
Yes, that's why.
There's an end to that sentence. I just don't know what it is.
Well, let's talk about Poison Ivy. We brought her up earlier. She starts out as a little girl, about Bruce's age.
And she's friends with Selena.
And her name is Ivy Pepper. Why? I don't know. It just is. That's not her name in the comics or anything. She's just kind of in the background. She doesn't do anything. And after a while, the people behind the show said, hey, you know what? Poison Ivy is supposed to be a sexy character. So let's make her an adult all of a sudden.
So she got touched by the guy that rapidly ages people, but it's just like a glancing touch.
Yeah.
And then she fell into the ocean or something.
Yeah, did she fall into, whether there was some kind of chemicals in the water or something, I think.
Oh, I thought she just got hit. Because she gets transformed again later when she dumps a bunch of chemicals on herself.
Yeah, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Either way, she ages up to an adult actress.
Just physically, though.
Yeah, which makes it even weirder.
But then, I guess that didn't work out for the writers, so they decided she needed to change again. So she goes into the shop and just dumps a bunch of chemicals on herself and goes into a Uma Thurman type cocoon thing and then pops out as Poison Ivy again.
Yeah, for some reason they didn't like that first actress. But they said the entire reason for aging her up was to kind of use like the sex appeal side of her or whatever, but they never did that. She was just kind of there.
Yeah, the show was really good.
Toward the end of the show, they did the thing where she kind of makes people fall in love with her with whatever she has them breathe or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, the writers finally saw Batman and Robin and said, oh, we could do that.
Yeah, but it would happen to characters that hadn't actually been there with her. They were being exposed to it by other people, but they were still falling in love with her. Even in context of the rest of the show, it made even less sense than everything else.
And her plans didn't make any sense. Like at one point, she bewitched the whole police station, but they didn't do anything. She didn't make them do anything. Potentially the most powerful character in the show to make literally anybody do whatever she wanted, but she didn't do anything.
Did the Mad Hatter hypnotize people? He did, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming nothing came of that. I don't remember.
I purposefully looked away from the TV every time he did it because I didn't want to, have it hypnotize me by accident. You're going to watch the next episode. Next thing I knew, I woke up and it was the end of season 4. So then, as a culmination at the end, like a bunch of the villains team up together.
Well, that happened a few times.
Right, that's my point. It's just the same idea repeating over and over again.
Yeah. One of the characters that they introduced was Harvey Dent, and they kept hinting at the whole Two-Face thing, but he never showed up after season 2.
I mean, hinting implies that it's subtle. It was not subtle.
Okay, you're right. Subtle is not a word that would ever apply to this show.
And I read that they didn't do that because Harvey Dent doesn't become Two-Face until after Batman is Batman. But neither do any of these other characters, so I don't know what was stopping them.
Yeah, I read that too. I thought it was really funny. What a weird reason. Maybe that's the only character they actually researched, and they were like, oh, that's not going to work. Maybe if they had done that with the other characters, they would have said, oh, this show doesn't work.
I'm actually looking at the ratings graph right now, and it's just like, boo, as the seasons go on.
I'm impressed, honestly, that this show lasted 5 seasons at all.
Yeah, 100 episodes.
Was it exactly 100 episodes?
Yep, and that's probably what they said. They probably kept pushing it to the studio. They were like, come on, we're at 66. Let's try and make it to 100. We're almost there. And they're like, you're barely over halfway.
I don't feel like there's anything to say about Lucius Fox. He's just there.
Yeah. They made it seem like he was going to be really important to Bruce.
Yeah, well, something that they did with Bruce as the show went on, which didn't really make sense. I mean, I know I said that a lot probably already, but he kind of becomes almost a resource to Jim Gordon. And at first, I guess it's supposed to be because he's rich and his company has influence and stuff like that. But as it goes on, they just kind of turn to Bruce and say, like, hey, can you help us with, disarming this bomb or figuring out whatever. And he's just like, I'll do it, yes.
But at the same time, they also say, you're just a kid. Get out of here. You shouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, which made it even weirder in the last episode when he comes back after being gone for 10 years and everybody keeps talking about how Bruce Wayne is coming back, but he was just some guy. When you compare it to all the other weird stuff that happened in the city, he as a character does not stand out.
Right.
At one point, Gordon does have another love interest, Sophia Falcone.
She comes in wanting to kind of pacify everything, but then she's really taking over everything.
Oh, that's right, because her dad got killed.
And she's using Penguin and Gordon to achieve that.
And then she dies and they forget about it and move on to other stuff.
Yeah, I think Tompkins shoots her in the head.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
And I'm pretty sure she's actually dead, even though people literally come back from the dead in this show.
Yeah. I will say that I was surprised at the level of violence in this show for just a regular Fox show. It gets pretty bloody sometimes.
I really liked Alfred's physical fighting.
I like the fact that I can say that Alfred gets in a fist fight with Bane, and that's something that actually happens in a Batman thing.
And he actually holds his own, too. So let's talk about Bane. So Bane shows up in, the last episode.
Actually, he was in most of the last season.
Well, he's not Bane yet, is he?
Well, that's true. But you can tell, as soon as he shows up, you can tell that he's going to be a bad guy.
Well, he does the Tom Hardy thing where he puts his hands kind of on his straps,
Yeah, and he even has the weird voice that's hard to understand. I thought it was really weird that they would try to pull things from a version of the character that people don't even really like.
And then when the person that makes him Bane puts on his mask or whatever, the first thing he says when he wakes up is just, Bane.
Is that what happened?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I was wondering where his name came from, because he just starts calling himself Bane.
Okay, if that's not true, nobody can argue that's something that wouldn't happen in this show.
That's true. I mean, we could be making half of this up, and it would still fit in. What happens to Bane? He's leading an army of whatever.
Wait, doesn't he just give up? They don't actually beat him?
Oh, his own people turn on him for some reason. I can't remember why.
And everyone does that end of movie thing where they just cheer all together.
Yeah. So that was in season 5 when Gotham was cut off from everywhere else by an earthquake at the end of season 4.
Right. I forgot about that.
Which did happen in the comics. I'm sure it was a lot cooler in the comics.
But instead of sending help, they just say no.
Which honestly is understandable. I would have nuked Gotham and just said, we got to end the show. Just get rid of everybody.
And they said, what's some natural disaster we can do that would just end the show? But the writers were like, we can work with that. And they were like, fuck. They want to do another season.
And that was another thing they didn't have a chance to do with the limited episodes, was show the different factions that are controlling different parts of what's left of Gotham. They kind of mentioned that Mr. Freeze controls something and Firefly and stuff, but they never show some of them at the end there.
Zaz.
Oh, yeah.
Who's in the show the entire time. Well, he's Zaz in the show.
Well, you don't know how it's pronounced in the comics.
I know how I pronounce it in my head.
I always said Zaz, but okay.
But he's in the whole show, and he's supposed to be this comic relief, which they really play into in the later seasons.
Kind of. I mean, it feels like a lot of characters could be comic relief, but sometimes I'm not sure if they're supposed to be or not, due to the quality of the writing. And he's a character that's known for using knives in the comics, but he mostly uses guns in the show.
Right.
Which means he's basically just like every other character.
Yeah, so when he gives himself a scar after getting a kill, he kind of like shoots part of himself off.
I mean, he definitely was in the show more in the earlier seasons, because he only shows up a little bit in the last season.
Right.
And the reaction I had when he showed up in season 5 was, oh yeah, I forgot about that guy. And that was the same thing I said throughout the show whenever a character would come back from earlier, because there were so many that just popped up at random.
Yeah. So the person basically in charge of Bane turns out to be Ra's al Ghul's daughter.
Oh yeah, Nissa al Ghul.
Which she resurrects Ra's al Ghul, who is pissed because he spent 3 seasons trying to die, and he wakes up and says, now I'm angry, but then decides, I might as well just be a bad guy again, until they kill him again.
Yeah, who oh yeah, didn't Barbara kill him?
No, Barbara grabs Bruce because Bruce is the only one that can kill him with the magic dagger, and she makes him shove it into him again.
Do you have anything to say about the actor who played Ra's al Ghul?
He was the Doctor on Deep Space Nine.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I don't think any of the other villains really stand out that much. I mean, you have like the Scarecrow.
Oh yeah, so the Scarecrow. Well, first it's the Scarecrow's dad.
Yeah.
Who, is trying to overcome fear by injecting fear into you? That sounds right.
I don't know. Sure.
And he does it to himself, and then he does it to his son, but his son doesn't let him finish. So he's like really scared, and then he disappears at the end of season 1. Then he shows up in season 4 after 2 seasons of nothing, and he is now the Scarecrow.
Yeah. A very well thought out and well planned character arc. Just like all the character arcs in this show.
I just imagine a dartboard with character faces, and the writer's just going...
Yeah, like the way the ventriloquist shows up at the very end.
Oh, yeah,
for no
I
reason.
totally forgot about that.
In literally just one scene.
So in the episode with the ventriloquist, they also introduced Jane Doe, who had not shown up at all before, was never even mentioned, and by the end of this episode was gone. But I thought it was ridiculous that in that episode, both Scarface and Jane Doe were introduced and gone within 45 minutes.
Yeah, and without any impact on anything else.
Right. So there's this big arc with Professor Pig.
In season 4.
And I want to say that really goes somewhere, but we're talking about this show.
Yeah, wasn't he killing cops and putting pigs on their faces or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's actually a newer character in the whole Batman mythos.
Yeah, I mean, the Court of Owls is newer than that.
Right. I was still waiting for Egghead to show up. We never got that.
Or the Bookworm. I know there was some writer that kept trying to get Condiment Man in the show, but they wouldn't let him.
Uh-huh. Because that would be ridiculous.
Yeah. It wouldn't fit in with the serious tone of the show. Jeffrey Combs showed up early on, somebody that we've seen on this channel before. They attached his head to a woman's body. The Dollmaker was the villain, I think.
Yeah, because it was when Fish Mooney was trapped underneath that hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And took over, and then went up and talked to Dollmaker, and then he took Jeffrey Combs and put his head on a different body, and that CGI was just so awful.
I mean, it was cool that it was kind of a horror-y thing that they were using Jeffrey Combs for, but yeah, it was dumb.
I was just upset Humpty Dumpty never showed up.
One last character, kind of, that I would like to talk about is the Harley Quinn characters. I don't remember what their explanation was in real life for why they wouldn't just put the Joker in the show, but you had all these characters that could turn into the Joker, but most of them die. They all seem to have their own Harley Quinns that could turn into Harley Quinn, but they die. And I can't think of a better way to cheapen a later character by saying, oh, they were just copying this character from earlier that didn't do anything and then died. I mean, imagine if that's what, I'm not a huge fan of the Joker to begin with, I will admit, but for fans of the Joker, imagine that the Joker was just imitating all these other previous Jokers, and it's just another one. Mm. And his Harley Quinn is the same thing, just another Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Think about how epic that would be. How awesome and satisfying.
So the show is ridiculous. Would you recommend watching it?
Oh, man. No.
I wouldn't either. I would recommend trying to find something that just puts all the storylines in order so you can just read how ridiculous it is.
Honestly, I would say it's not even worth finishing this video. You might as well just stop it right now. the few good things that stick out in there, the few good actors and the cinematography are completely wasted on this show. I mean, the writing, I think, is the biggest problem with everything because nothing makes any sense. Things just happen, and for some reason, you're supposed to care. But for me, the only reason I kept watching was because I wanted to see how stupid it was going to get. It was entertaining.
Yes, it was entertaining.
But only to a certain extent. By the end of the show, I honestly kind of was just waiting for it to be over.
Yeah, I could have been doing way more productive things than watch this show.
Yeah, like drinking bleach or
bathing in acid.
Yeah.
I think the only reason I watched the show is because you were talking about it and I said, that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, I know it was the kind of thing where I would say things that happened in the show. I would describe events, and the only way you would actually believe them is if you watched the show yourself.
So, overall, I would say do not waste your time.
Yeah, especially if you're a Batman fan.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it's probably more insulting than anything else.
Agreed. Like and subscribe, whatever.
That's a good ending, yeah. I'll put that in there.